Hey guys, I know I'm late. I'm so sorry. I was hoping I was going to be able to start this by 2:30, and then I was hoping I was going to be able to start by 2:45, and now it is 2:54. It has just been one of those days. I was running around trying to do errands. It took me a little longer than I thought they were going to take, and I need to just breathe for a second. I literally bolted in the door, ran around the house looking for my tripod because I took it to a speaking engagement I had last week. And so I was just trying to get all my stuff together so I could get on here with you guys. I don't know if anybody will show up live because I know I'm late. I'm so sorry. Okay, but we're going to do this anyway. And then you can watch it on replay. So if you're here, feel free to say hello and let me know that you're here. But what I want to talk about today is the biggest mistakes people make when they're pitching themselves. So sometimes it's potential clients who come to me. Sometimes it's people who send me private messages on Facebook and want to ask for my advice about the pitching that they're trying to do. And I'm talking about pitching for guest blogs, speaking engagements, pitching for media appearances. Anytime you're pitching yourself for an opportunity, really the same kind of rules apply. And I see the same mistakes no matter which format you're trying to do that in. So I will go ahead and get right into it. Again, I'm so sorry that I was running late today, but hopefully you guys can catch this later on the replay. If you are here, feel free to say hello. I would love to say hi and know that you're here. But okay, I'm gonna get started. So the single biggest mistake I see, no matter what you're pitching yourself for, is that your idea is too vague. It's too broad, it's too big. We talk all the time about having a niche and really knowing the specific thing that you're good at or that you want to help people with, and speaking to the people who have that problem, have that question. And for public speaking, I see a lot of people who pitch themselves for public speaking and they say they want to talk about leadership or they want to do a motivational or an inspirational speech. That's fine, and there's nothing wrong with any of that. Jimmy says hi Jimmy. There's nothing wrong with wanting to do something that's based around leadership or communication or something that's motivational or inspirational, but just know that everyone else out there who has no real experience or training with pitching themselves is pitching themselves the same way. So what you need to do is know what your niche is and pitch very specific topics. Again, this is whether you're pitching a guest blog, a speaking engagement, a media appearance. It's got to be something really specific. So what I tell people to do is, and this is the sort of the 5-step system I use in public speaking, but I think it applies to all of these. Figure out what your goal is, okay? Why do you want to be on the TV show that you want to be on? Why do you want to give a public speech? Why do you want to do a guest blog on Forbes? Understand why you want to, okay? Then understand, and let me just give some examples. I shouldn't speed through this. I feel like I'm in such a hurry because I rushed to get on camera, but now that I'm here, I can slow down. I can give you guys my advice all the way through. Okay, so when we talk about why, do you want to establish yourself as an expert, just grow awareness of you and your business? Do you want to get qualified business leads who are potentially going to become clients or customers? Do you want to sell a book? For example, my book here, Saturday Millionaires, when I do speeches in booster clubs, that's what I care about, is selling my book. It's not trying to get people to be clients. They're not generally interested in the sort of services that I provide, or if they are, it's a very small percentage of the audience. So whether it's public speaking or guest blogging or a media appearance, a podcast interview, whatever it is, know why you're doing it. What are you hoping to get out of it, okay? Once you know what your goal is and why you're doing it, then you can choose who you want to speak to, okay? So what type of people do you need to be in front of in order to reach that goal? So sometimes people come to me and they say they want to write for Forbes, and when I really dig deep with them about why they want to write Forbes and about what kind of clients or customers they work with, I have to tell them that those people aren't reading Forbes and that there's other websites that are much better for them. Or they want to be on a morning television show. I'm sorry, guys. I've had something in my eye all day and it is bothering me again. They tell me they want to be on a morning TV show. And then when we really talk it through, and I tell them the demographic for most morning television shows, particularly in the 9 o'clock hour, which is when they like to have guests, is stay-at-home moms and retirees. There's nothing wrong with that. For some people, that's the right audience, but for a lot of people, it's not. I have a client I was talking to yesterday, and her, ideal client is someone who needs online marketing. And those people probably aren't watching that show. They're busy working during that time period. They're not watching morning TV at 9 o'clock in the morning. Now, that doesn't mean there's no value to going on, but I just want you to really think about the audience that you're getting in front of. Now, there's sometimes that an appearance like that makes sense because you credential yourself. So by being on TV or writing for Forbes, something like that, getting in front of a certain audience, maybe it's doing a TED Talk, things that people recognize as being difficult to get or prestigious or things only experts do, they can credential you, okay? But you got to know going into it that that's the reason why you're doing it. And that's why I said we start with why. Why are you doing it? Why are you pitching yourself for the speech or the guest blog or the media appearance or the podcast interview or whatever it is? Understand why you're doing it first. Okay, then decide who you need to be in front of and make sure that you're pitching a publication or a show that makes sense for you, okay? Then you've got to develop your topic, okay? This is kind of where the big mistake comes in. I said at the beginning, I think the big mistake is that people don't choose a niche. I see Patricia join. Hi, Patricia. Patricia is a very good friend of mine from when I lived in Atlanta, and she just married a very good-looking Italian man and is living in Italy now, so we can all be very jealous of Patricia, okay? And it's so much fun. This is how I get to interact with her now that she's over in Italy. So I started in the beginning by saying you've got to understand what your niche is, okay? So when we talk about topic selection, you're not going to pitch that you want to write about something big and broad like leadership, or you want to do a speech that's motivational or inspirational, okay? You need to decide what you want to talk to people about, and it should usually be a question you can answer for people. Maybe it's multiple questions that are all related around the same topic. So a question you can answer for people or a problem you can solve for people, okay? Because what you want is for the audience to learn something, for there to be a takeaway. Sometimes it's actionable advice that they can go implement right away. And particularly when you're pitching conferences or corporate events, there better be takeaways, okay? People have got to learn something for them to be willing to not only give you that time, but especially in a lot of those situations, you're getting paid. So they want people to walk away having learned how to do something or learned how to get through a certain situation. They want them to have actionable tips that they can go implement. So I want to give you guys some examples of some pitches I've kind of seen and heard lately from people, and I'm not bagging on these people. I'm not going to name them, and I'm not going to give enough details that you would know who they are, but I want you to understand the types of pitches that don't work, okay? Patricia said you just made Salvatore blush. I know. I haven't even met her hot Italian husband, but I've seen pictures. And look, I would say this in front of my husband. I think I've shown my husband pictures of them on the computer. I think he agrees. So yeah. But I'm so glad you guys are tuning in from Italy. Must be like dinner time there. It's middle of my afternoon. I'm trying to get a little energy burst by talking to you guys this afternoon. Okay. So picking your topic, I had someone who sent me a message recently and told me they wanted to write for Forbes. And when they told me their topic, it was something that was all about them. It was really more of a bragging, self-promotional kind of post. And I don't mean that in a negative way at all. There are very positive ways to self-promote. I encourage self-promotion, but that's not the kind of post that's going to get picked up by Forbes, okay? What you want to do, and this is how I know whether people have done their research or not, and this is true for really any platform, but I particularly see this problem with guest blogs and magazine articles, is that you want to be in Forbes or in Glamour or whatever it is. You pick this outlet that sounds great that you've always wanted to be in, and that's fine. But then they pitch topics that aren't right for that outlet, okay? The best thing you can do is when you decide you want to write for an outlet, and I just gave this advice to a client today. I told this client, I think that we can get you a contributor role at Forbes, Inc., or Fast Company, okay? So what I want you to do, this is what I told her, is start reading all three of them every day. Read the section that applies to your area and to your business, the section where you would see your writing live. And that's important. You need to know what section of the website or the magazine it's going to go in. You don't want to pitch a health and beauty editor for a lifestyle piece. You don't want to pitch a dating editor for a health piece. You want to make sure you're pitching the right editor, but you also want to know where your content would live, okay? You'll hear from editors that they want to get original pitches, okay? And by original, they mean, they don't want the exact same article they've done. So if they did an article, like let's take, for example, recently I did one for Fast Company on LinkedIn tips for public speakers, things you should have in your LinkedIn profile if you want to be a public speaker. You wouldn't want to come back 2 weeks later as someone else and pitch a story about how to optimize your LinkedIn profile to be a public speaker. They're not going to take it because I just did it. But you know now that that's a topic they did say yes to. So what can you piggyback off of? What else can you do around public speaking? Maybe it's the 3 social media platforms that speakers have to be on. You see what I did there? It's related, it's similar, so you kind of know maybe it's a topic they would take, but it's not exactly what somebody else has already done. They want original. They do not usually want outside of the box, okay? And I made that mistake really early on when I was pitching to magazines, where I would look in the magazine like I was supposed to, and I'd be like, well, they've never covered anything like this, and it's going to be like revolutionary, and I'm going to blow them away with this pitch. And then they email me back and they would be like, we don't really do things like that. So they want it to be original in that there's not another piece living on their site or in their magazine exactly like that, but they don't want it too far outside of the box. It really does need to it needs to fit in a category. It needs to fit their demographic. So there's only so crazy you can get with that kind of stuff. And that's why I think it's so important before you pitch. And this goes for pitching to speak at a conference. Look at the types of speakers they've had in the past. Look at the topics they've done in the past so that you, 1, don't pitch the exact same topic, and 2, you can use it to pitch something that's similar but different, okay? Because that's what they're most likely to take. Instead, people send me these pitch ideas that are so far off from what that outlet would ever do that it makes it seem to me like you've never read that outlet and that you have no idea what topics they cover or who their audience is, okay? You need to be reading the outlets you pitch to or looking at past agendas from conferences to see who they've had speak before, or if you're wanting to go on a TV show, most of them put their guests, especially recent guests, they put the videos on their website. Watch the videos, get a feel for what the outlet is doing, okay, and try to pick something that fits in, that's closely related to things that they've covered. That is your best shot at getting picked up and getting a yes, okay? As much as we encourage outside of the box thinking, sometimes you really can't get too far outside the box, and sometimes you're so far outside, it's like, have you ever heard of this publication? Have you ever watched this show? And if an editor or a talent booker ends up asking themselves that, they might not respond to you at all. That's worst case scenario, okay? You want them to email you back or call you back, even if they're going to say no, because you want them to give you tips of how you could tweak your pitch and get a yes. That's actually how I got my first magazine article, and I'm going to write a newsletter about that in the next week or 2. I pitched Women's Day. It was an idea they didn't take, but they did respond to me and they told me why they didn't take it, and they gave me a suggestion for how I could tweak it a little bit to get it accepted. I tweaked it, they accepted it, okay? And that's how I started writing for Women's Day, and that was actually the first magazine that I wrote for outside of sports, because I was doing my sports work already. Robin says she's bummed her live isn't working. I can see you, but the audio is off. Well, I think other people can hear me because they've commented and it seems like they can. If anybody else cannot hear me, hopefully they'll let me know, although they obviously didn't just hear me say that, but hopefully the replay will be in good shape when it goes up. So it's important to take a look at where you're going to be pitching and to understand who their audience is and the types of topics that they like to receive. That is the single biggest mistake I see when people come to me either to hire me or just coming and asking my advice and they're sharing with me sample pitches that they've sent. The number one mistake is that it looks like they haven't researched the show or the outlet or the conference or whatever it is at all, because their topic's so far off base, okay? If you look at a site and almost all of their articles are, 10 reasons why X, 5 tips to Y, if they're all numbered lists, you should pitch a numbered list. If a lot of them start how to XYZ, you should probably figure out how to do your topic in a how-to version, okay? Look at the headlines. I wrote a blog on this and I will post it in the comments to the video when I get done with the live here, but I talked about how to set yourself up to get your guest blog approved, and really honestly, it applies to a lot of different things, but it's all about how to take a look at the outlets that you're interested in and learn how to pitch yourself for those outlets by fitting into the model they already have, okay? You're not gonna get them to change their demographic. You're not gonna get them to cover something that's so outside of their zone. You're not gonna get them to let you do a first-person story about your success if they don't run other first-person stories by people who are like you, okay? They only run first-person stories about published authors and you're not one. They're probably not gonna run one. Or they only run published stories about people who have hundreds of thousands of followers on social media and are these big national superstars, okay? You're probably not gonna get to either. But if they've run stories on other entrepreneurs who seem like they're in a similar position to you, then fine, you can pitch your first-person story. But go on these sites, look at the conference agendas, watch the TV shows, listen to the podcast interviews, see how you can fit into their model. And if it even makes sense for you, you might find out that when you go through those first steps and you decide why you're doing what you're doing and what your ultimate goal is, and then who you want to be in front of, you might learn that that audience isn't someone you want to be in front of and that it's not going to get you to your goals. And that's okay. And that's why I do these steps in that order. That's why I start with why and then with who before I start finding the where. So many people come to me and they say, I want to do a speech at, whatever event. And then when we really get to talking about it, it's not the right event for them. It doesn't have the people there that need to be there for them to reach their goal. It just sounded cool. And again, there's sometimes with big outlets and big opportunities where you do them simply because they credential you and they position you as an expert. And that's fine if that's your goal. But if your goal is to get business leads out of a speaking engagement or out of a blog post, you need to understand whether that's going to happen or not and whether that's a reasonable goal for what you're trying to do. So hopefully that helps. That kind of covers what I see as the biggest mistake or mistakes that people make when they're pitching themselves. If you guys have questions, I will stick around for a couple minutes and answer any questions you have. And certainly if you watch this replay or don't get a chance to answer or to ask a question now, you can leave it in the comments and I will come back later and answer it. I'm going to an event for a little while this afternoon and evening, so it may be later on before I can answer you, but I will also come back in the comments and post the blog I wrote about making sure your guest blog gets accepted and the steps you can take to get there. So I will put that in there. I don't see any questions. Thank you so much for those of you who came live. It's always good to know that somebody's here and I'm not just talking to my iPad. Oh, I see a question. Jimmy says, how do you break into the sports writing business? I'm doing it part-time, but I'm not a 22-year-old just out of college with a journalism degree. I wasn't either. I was a practicing attorney. I was more in my mid to late 20s. I was doing it on the side when I had free time. I won't go into it too much here. We can certainly talk offline and I can send you, I think I just did a podcast a few weeks ago with a sports outlet about how I got my start. So I will shoot you that link when I get done because I think that'll tell you my story and a lot of the tips that I had for people. But it's about putting yourself out there. It's what I talk about in this group all the time, which is being more visible, figuring out what your niche is, and then becoming more visible for it so that you can position yourself as an expert in that area and being consistent about it. I blogged for 2 years before I got any sort of opportunity to really be in front of people on a blog bigger than mine. And then I blogged for another 2 years there before I got the opportunity to go write for ESPN. And I was blogging a lot. I do this number a lot in my speeches. I think it's something like I wrote 150 blogs in 175 days, in the 175 days that led up to me getting my ESPN offer. I had a niche that was really well defined, the business college sports, and I was writing about it every day, and I was writing about things other people weren't writing about. I was using social media to get my work to people who might retweet it or might link to it in their stories, who had bigger audiences, and after doing that for a long time, that finally paid off for me. So I will send you the link to the podcast I did on this recently because I think you'll get a lot out of that. I don't see any other questions, and I got to run do a few things for my lovely clients before I go to my event today. But thank you to you guys that showed up live. It's always nice to have people here, and I'll come back and check for questions later. Thanks, guys. Have a good rest of the day.